So some big news on the Mueller investigation broke about 2 days ago now, but news has been rolling in consistently ever since then about more specifics. There will be no more indictments coming. So obviously this has made many Democrats very upset, many Democrats who've invested a lot of time and energy into Mueller, thinking Mueller would effectively be the anti-Trump savior. It appears like that's not going to be the case. I want to show you, this is a CNN clip here. This is when the news first broke. You're going to hear them break it down, and I think some of the reactions are pretty interesting.
Wolf, one big piece of news that we've just received here is that the special counsel, Robert Mueller, is not recommending any further indictments. Now, obviously, that's a significant development, as there have been many looming questions out there, many open question marks, I should really say, about whether we would see any superseding indictments, but I am told no further recommendations of any indictments whatsoever. So it is not as if when we see the principal conclusions that Bill Barr eventually submits his distillation to Congress that we will see any mention of any recommendations of any indictments. I'm told that that is not happening, so we can put to rest that speculation once and for all, Wolf.
That doesn't necessarily mean that other U.S. attorneys in the Southern District of New York or the U.S. attorney here in Washington, D.C. or Northern Virginia, they can pursue legal action, right?
Absolutely. And we should make that point that there are certainly been spin-offs, so to speak, from much of Mueller's work. We've seen him already farming out certain cases here to the D.C. U.S. Attorney's Office, also the Eastern District of Virginia, and of course the Southern District of New York, which is handling the Michael Cohen investigation. So we have seen outputs from his investigation, but we are not going to receive any further recommendations from Mueller about the core work of his mandate, which was Russian interference in the election, obstruction of justice. All of those issues were really central to what he was put here to do. No further indictments on that front, Wolf.
From the special counsel. But presumably some of those who were brought before grand jury, some individuals who have not been indicted, they can't necessarily completely breathe easily because there could be indictments coming from these other U.S. attorneys.
Well, certainly anybody who has currently been before a grand jury, anyone who has lied, they are certainly in jeopardy. That is certainly not off the table here. But in terms of any fresh indictments, any fresh investigative work, that has all been put to rest.
Can we assume
let's be specific. This is really good news for a lot of people around Donald Trump. Donald Trump Jr., Jared Kushner, Jerome Corsi, the writer who had a draft indictment presented to him by Mueller's office, and they decided not to go forward with this. I mean, this is, let's be fair here. I mean, there has been a lot of suspicion around certain people, and a lot of, negative things have been said, and imputation of criminal activity, and Mueller has said, I am not proceeding, and there is no better news to receive than you are not being indicted by the United States government.
Jeffrey, you once worked as a prosecutor. So when the senior justice official tells Laura Jarrett the special counsel is not recommending any further indictments, can we conclude there have been no sealed indictments that would be unsealed at some point down the road?
Well, boy, Wolf, you're like a lawyer. That's an interesting question. I think the answer is we can assume that. I mean, that is a very good follow-up question, but I think that would be very coy if no further indictments. In plain English, it means to me that there are no further.
Or let me ask Laura Jarrett that same question, Laura. It's your reporting the special counsel is not recommending any further indictments. As far as you know, have there been sealed indictments that potentially down the road, for whatever reason, could be unsealed?
Wolf, I was channeling you. I asked that very same question. I pressed them at length, sealed, unsealed, in any form. You're telling me this is not coming down the pipe in any way in the coming weeks and months, and I was told unequivocally, no, it's done.
So no more indictments, no more sealed indictments, no collusion, no obstruction, because understand, even if there was the appearance of Trump obstructing, and of course there was with what he did with Comey, among many other things, that's not the same as proving it in a legal framework. It's not the same thing, and you have to prove intent on that front, and they can't establish that. So no obstruction, and also no recommendation of impeachment. So now let me give you some more information on this. This is from USA Today, some more specifics. The investigation led by Robert S. Mueller III found that neither President Trump nor any of his aides conspired or coordinated with the Russian government's 2016 election interference, according to a summary of the special counsel's findings made public on Sunday by Attorney General William P. Barr. Now, let me pause there for a second. Some people are saying, well, William Barr is like a Republican hack, a pro-Trump hack, so his summary of it is not legit. To which my response is, you think Robert Mueller would sit there quietly as the Attorney General is basically totally mischaracterizing the findings of his report? The answer is no. Robert Mueller would come out and say that's not an accurate summary of what I've put in the report. So obviously it is an accurate summary because Mueller hasn't come out and said you're mischaracterizing it. So what a weird deflection from people who are like really obsessed and mired in the most extreme interpretation of Russiagate. Let me continue. The summary also said that the special counsel's team lacked sufficient evidence to establish that President Trump illegally obstructed justice, but added that Mr. Mueller's team stopped short of exonerating Mr. Trump. Quote, while this report does not conclude that the president committed a crime, it also does not exonerate him, Mr. Barr quoted Mr. Mueller as writing. All right, let me pause there too. So, in other words, there's no evidence to bring him down on any of this stuff and to get any more indictments, but I'm not going to say that he's exonerated. So that one line is going to be beaten to death by people who want to hang on to the most extreme interpretation of Russiagate. And they're going to say, well, he wasn't exonerated, so what does that mean? It means we were kind of right all along. Well, no, because if you were right, there would have been a plethora of evidence there, and he would have been able to take further action. So that's kind of misleading when people are trying to put that part front and center because, listen, there wasn't enough evidence to go further. So when there's not enough evidence, usually what that means is they can't prove it, and usually what that means is it didn't happen. Now, that line is to give people enough wiggle room to say, well, maybe it did, and we just can't see it because there's no evidence of it. Okay, well, congratulations. I hope you like the fact that you consider yourself rational, reasonable, objective, empirical, and you're willing to believe something without evidence. Let's continue. The Russia investigation has buffeted the White House from the earliest days of the Trump administration, with numerous current and former aides to Mr. Trump brought for questioning to the special counsel's warren of offices in a plain office building in downtown Washington. FBI agents fanned out across the nation and traveled to numerous foreign countries. Witnesses were questioned by members of Mr. Mueller's team at airports upon landing in the United States. Ultimately, a half dozen former Trump aides were indicted or convicted of crimes, most for conspiracy or lying to investigators. 25 Russian intelligence operatives and experts in social media manipulation were charged last year in two extraordinarily detailed indictments released by the special counsel. The inquiry concluded without charging any Americans for conspiring with the Russian campaign. Okay, so some more numbers on what has already happened in the Mueller investigation. Take a look at this. 5 people have been sentenced to prison. 1 person has been convicted at trial. 7 people pleaded guilty. 37 people and entities charged. Overall criminal counts 199. Now, again, for the so-called Russian interference in the election, all they have is a troll farm that had very minimal impressions. The total number of impressions from the troll farm is like less than Secular Talk gets in a couple days. So they had a troll farm which posted pictures of like a muscular cartoon version of Bernie Sanders. That's the Russian interference in the election. And what they're saying is, oh yeah, we indicted the troll farm, which shows there was obviously, Russian interference, but okay, we couldn't establish any connection between Donald Trump or even Trump's team and Russia. So listen, of course I can't get out of this segment without saying I told you so, but has it ever been more deserved? I told you so. And I'm going to get to a compilation in a little bit. I'm not going to do it in this segment because this segment is more about just getting the facts out of the way and telling everybody exactly what's been discovered and what hasn't been discovered. But I was warning everybody. My line I kept coming back to was, you're not going to get President Trump on treason. You're not going to get him on being Putin's puppet. You're not going to get him on collusion. You're not going to get him on conspiracy. And some people would ask, like, oh, how did you know that? Well, because there was no evidence of that. No evidence of that any step of the way. And everything that people tried to claim was evidence, they were just obviously mischaracterizing stuff and extrapolating and reading between the lines. And listen, I said it once, I'll say it again, I'll say it a million more times. Is Donald Trump a deeply corrupt business person? Yes. Is Donald Trump guilty of violating the emoluments clause of the Constitution? Yes. Is Donald Trump basically doing the bidding of the Israeli government and the Saudi government? Yes. Is Donald Trump, or has Donald Trump at different times in his life, has he done money laundering, bank fraud, and a plethora of other financial crimes? Yes. I mean, he had to pay a fine for fraud, had to pay it out to people who he hoodwinked with his shitty fake Trump University. So I'm saying all this to let everybody know there are roughly 19,716 legitimate anti-Trump arguments, and legitimate anti-Trump arguments specifically in regards to the law, and you can go after him in a legal framework. But that doesn't mean that anything you can theoretically come up with, means he's guilty of that, because that's not true. And when they came up with this conspiracy theory of like, oh, Donald Trump is Vladimir Putin's puppet, and he's obviously working for him, and he did collusion, and he's like this Manchurian candidate, just look at the policies he's done in regards to Russia. It immediately debunks that theory. And if you're willing to be open and honest about this, if you're willing to be objective about this, you'd admit that right away. Let me tell you something. The guy is not under Vladimir Putin's thumb if he arms Ukrainian rebels who are fighting Russia. He's not under Vladimir Putin's thumb if he did a NATO buildup on Russia's border. He's not under Putin's thumb if he sent U.S. warships to the Black Sea. He's not under Putin's thumb if he was berating Germany every other day because they have an oil deal with Russia, and he wants to axe that oil deal so that Germany can do an oil deal with the United States. And the list goes on and on. We're permanently militarily occupying Syria. You think Vladimir Putin wants the world's sole superpower permanently stationed in a place where he's the main ally? No. But all of this evidence was swept aside, is that even a word? Swept aside, and people were like, I don't know. I mean, I hear Rachel Maddow talking a lot about how there's some creepy stuff with Trump and Russia, so maybe the most extreme interpretation of this conspiracy theory is true, and Donald Trump is some sort of Manchurian candidate. I mean, honestly, it's comical, man. Now, again, to give a different example, when you look at Israel and when you look at Saudi Arabia, you literally won't find a single policy that this administration has pursued that's against the interests of those countries. Also, Jared Kushner took a tremendous amount of money, millions of dollars from Israeli banks. When it comes to Saudi Arabia, Donald Trump at his hotels, or at his hotel specifically in Washington, D.C., actually, has taken hundreds of thousands of dollars from the Saudi government at his hotel, and then he turns around and gives them a multi-billion-dollar weapons deal and gives them whatever they want, and looks the other way when they murder Jamal Khashoggi, a journalist, and looks the other way as they do a genocide in Yemen. There's a mountain of evidence. If you wanted to accuse Trump of being a puppet of anybody, it's Israel and Saudi Arabia. A mountain of evidence to prove that. But nobody talked about that. Nobody brought that up. Everybody was obsessed with Russia, and it took a mind of its own, man. It became like this narrative that was unfalsifiable to many people. And listen, I'm not even necessarily that mad at the Democratic politicians on this, because if you look at the midterm elections, they didn't even run on it. So the Democratic politicians kind of pulled back at the last minute and said, okay, what are we doing here? But the people I am mad at, all of mainstream media. All of mainstream media. Because they were the ones who were leading this charge. They basically put all of their eggs in the Mueller-Trump-Russia collusion basket. And then now that it didn't come to pass, they look like a bunch of idiots. And now Trump gets to turn around and say, rightly, witch hunt. Now, again, the other aspects of the Mueller investigation, like all the other, like getting Manafort, getting Flynn, and knocking off people in his administration one by one, I think that's all wonderful, and I think it's worth it, and there are legit crimes there. So that's all fine and dandy. But you have to understand, the main focus of the media was not the run-of-the-mill corruption and financial crimes happening within the Trump administration, because if they were focusing on that, I wouldn't be objecting to what they're saying, because all that stuff is true. Their main focus was Trump-Russia collusion. So they took the most extreme interpretation of Russiagate, they pushed that nonstop, now it comes up empty, and now they look like a bunch of dickheads, and Trump gets to turn around and go, I told you, witch hunt. No collusion, witch hunt. And congratulations. So you guys made Trump look like a victim, and now he gets to do a victory lap. Now, the final point is this. There's so much stuff that you could focus, even if you wanted to stay with the theories of, oh my God, backroom dealings, Trump not beholden to the American people, you have emoluments to talk about. So there are people in this country, probably the majority of the American people, if you ask them, what are emoluments? They'd be like, imagine if all the energy that was wasted saying Trump did collusion with Russia, imagine if all of that energy was put into discussing the real as a heart attack emoluments cases against Donald Trump. So for those of you who don't know what that is, basically there's a clause in the Constitution called the Emoluments Clause where it basically says the president cannot take money from foreign governments. And of course, Donald Trump has taken a tremendous amount of money from foreign governments, from a variety of foreign governments. And then of course he turns around and does favors for them in regards to policy. That's unconstitutional, very clearly so. Because now a president is more likely to set policy for, these countries that are paying him and not for the best interest of the American people. So there are multiple emoluments cases going through the court system right now, and two of them have actually gone past the first hurdle. Like, judges have ruled, this case 100% has merit and it may proceed. So there's a real case for, even if you're on the side of impeachment, which, again, there's an open question as to the wisdom of that. But even if you're on that team, the emoluments case is 8,000 times stronger than the fucking Trump-Russia collusion. And nobody even spoke about the emoluments case. So there's still stuff to talk, about Trump and backroom deals and, sexy conspiracies. There's still stuff to talk about. And they didn't talk about the ones that actually make sense. And understand, I told you guys, and I predicted it, that you're not going to get Trump on collusion or treason or conspiracy or any of this stuff. I told you. I warned you. But what else did I say? You can relax. You can breathe easy because I guarantee you the day Donald Trump is no longer president, whether that's in 2020 or 2024, whatever it may be, he will be indicted on multiple financial crimes. And I still think that's the case today. I've already been proven right on step one. No further indictments, no Trump-Russia collusion. Now, step two is when he gets out of office, the investigation in the Southern District of New York, that investigation, they're going to have a lot of dirt on him, and they can actually, I think, successfully go after him on that front. And the other thing is this, guys, you got to understand, it's an open legal question as to whether or not you can indict a sitting president. That's an open legal question. Most legal experts say you can only impeach a sitting president. And in order to impeach a sitting president, they would have had to have over-the-top evidence, basically proof, and still it would have been a miracle given that to even convince some Republicans to say, yeah, okay, well, obviously we need to go after this guy, and obviously we need to impeach this guy. But furthermore, in order to impeach, it has to be a crime that's committed in office. In office. Now, for the stuff that's in the Southern District of New York case, that's all crimes that predate his time as president. So you wouldn't, even if you were to prove money laundering and ties to the mafia and, tax evasion and bank fraud, even if you're able to prove all that, which I think you can, that would not transfer to we can impeach him over this because he did not commit those specific crimes while in office. So that's why I've always said the investigation in the Southern District of New York that's going after his financial crimes, that's the real deal Holyfield. And that's what you're really going to get him on. Now, I thought there was a chance that Mueller might, get Don Jr., for example, or some people who are even closer in Trump's inner circle on further financial crimes. But ultimately, I told you, you're not going to get collusion. You're not going to get treason. You're not going to get some sort of grand conspiracy. And I was proven right. But just understand, because there's going to be a lot of, deflection and obfuscating and rationalizing and explaining away coming in the next, week or so from media folks who were wrong, and there's going to be a lot of arguments of Mueller didn't focus on the right thing, or, why didn't this happen? Yeah, the dude who had the backing of the U.S. government and the dude who had 2 years and basically an unlimited budget to look at every angle of this thing, yeah, he somehow missed it. Armchair pontificators, yeah, he somehow wasn't able to find the thing that was right in front of his face. No, it's that, like I said, the most extreme interpretation of the Russiagate theory, the collusion theory, always had no evidence for it. Whereas there's a tremendous amount of evidence for money laundering, for all these financial crimes, and people should have been focusing on that all along. And actually, to be clear, they shouldn't have focused on that primarily. The main focus of the Democrats, the main focus of the media, should have always been policy. That's how you defeat Donald Trump. Talk about how he's a rabid, foaming at the mouth neocon who's increasing all of our wars. Talk about how he's done deregulation of Wall Street and cut taxes for the rich, which are disastrous for this country. Talk about how he hasn't gotten an infrastructure deal. Talk about all the serious policy-related issues, the fact that Goldman Sachs is all throughout his administration, and he's not looking out for the regular guy. Talk about how 93,000 jobs have been outsourced. Policy should have been front and center with Democratic politicians and with the media, and then secondary to that should have been the investigation that is incredibly real, which is into all of his financial crimes. So really the biggest fail here was among the media class, and now, I guarantee you, I've already seen it. They're already deflecting. And by the way, credit to Glenn Greenwald, Jimmy Dore, Rania Khalek, Aaron Mate, Michael Tracy, Max Blumenthal, Ben Norton, Jordan Sheridan, and Matt Taibbi, among others. Forgive me if I miss some. Because these are the people who all along have not gone along with the hysteria and have not said, oh, obviously the most extreme interpretation of this is true and he's a Putin puppet. And I mean, again, all it took was a minimal amount of objectivity to know that that was nonsense. Because all you had to do was look at the policies in regards to Russia and find that the majority of them are anti-Russia and even more hawkish than Obama. So by definition, he can't be a puppet because if he is a puppet, he's literally the worst puppet in the world because doing the opposite of what the puppet master wants him to do. So credit to all these people for being objective all throughout. And by the way, it was not easy. It was not easy because every time there was an unrelated to the main claim, advancement in the case, like when they went after Manafort and Flynn and whatnot, we would all get bombarded with tweets like, aha, fucking idiots, you're wrong. To which the response is, no, none of us ever said that you're not going to get the people around Trump. None of us ever said they weren't corrupt. None of us ever said you're not going to get them on unrelated charges, which is exactly what happened. But what we did say is the main theory of Trump-Russia collusion or conspiracy or treason is not going to happen. And we were right. Now, before everybody says, oh, hold on, the entire report isn't released, Kyle. Number one, I want it to be released, 100%, and it probably will at some point be released. But number two, the crux of the whole thing is they say no evidence of Trump-Russia collusion. That's what they say. They say, oh, we can't exonerate, but there's no evidence of it. And then also, most important point, no more indictments. No more indictments. Not recommending impeachment. No evidence of Trump-Russia collusion. That's the exact thing we've been saying all along. And you remember who's right and who's wrong. Because, Rachel Maddow, for example, oh my God, you want to talk about embarrassing. She pinned her whole show and all of her hopes on the Mueller investigation, and now the Mueller investigation goes up in flames for their central claim. And what do you do now? I'll tell you what they do now. Well, by the way, all it would take for any of these people to get respect is for them to say, you know what? we were wrong in our interpretation of what happened with Mueller. We were wrong. We assumed the worst case scenario, the most extreme scenario of Trump being a Putin puppet and doing collusion. That part is just not true. It's just objectively not true. Now, are there other things you can go after Trump for? Yes. But on the main claim, we were wrong. But here's the other ways in which I think we were ultimately correct. If they said that, man, I'd be like, okay, good for you, at least admitting the core of it. But I guarantee you, most of them, if not all of them, are not going to do that. They're immediately going to go to rationalize, deflect, obfuscate, accuse Mueller of being part of some sort of conspiracy now, accuse Mueller of, he didn't look at the right things. Right. Yeah, he spent 2 years with his fucking thumb up his ass, looking under that rock when he should have looked under that rock. I mean, come on, man. Come on. So they're not going to own up to it. And then meanwhile, yet again, I'll say it again, co-founder of Justice Democrats here, Justice Democrats got elected all over the place. Was I ever invited on TV to say, how did you guys do it? What was your theory behind this? What was your philosophy? How did this work so well when you guys had no money, no power, you were nobody, and then all of a sudden, now we got a Justice Democrats caucus. Wow, that's kind of crazy. Can you please tell us your secret? No invites to talk about that. Guarantee you on this front, no invites. Hey, you're a lefty. You're a committed lefty who's been saying from day one, they're not going to get Trump on collusion with Russia. How did you get it right? Not going to happen. In fact, I will be further marginalized now. Guarantee you. Now they're even less likely to have me on air. Guarantee you. So just know, your media is broken. The system is broken. They just gave Trump a giant political win, and it is beyond pathetic.